This is 80s themed, as you can see. What I'm going to try and cover here is the design system missing manual. So I'm going to cover a little bit about myself. My fonts didn't load, that doesn't matter. And you'll see why I talk a little bit about myself, because it's hopefully relevant. Then I'll talk about establishing a baseline for a design system, and this is completely about UX dog fooding. The activity of taking a design system and applying all the UX practices you normally apply, but apply that lens on yourself and your existing design system. And then I'm showing some tools that we're currently using with the design system team that I've got, where we've got canvases, and we've mapped out different parts of canvases to measure and monitor our design system. I'll talk about how you measure to improve, and this is how this links into a continuous improvement culture. And I'll also then show how that links in with innovation and prototyping and all those kind of best practices. And then I'll do a rough summary at the end. Me, I've been in the industry since 1995, and an old person. My wife and I built an app as an experiment in when the iPhone first came out. We got 400,000 downloads for a very simple app. So we learned a lot from supporting about 400,000 users from that. And I've spent a career building component frameworks, all the way from bespoke revealing modules, all the way up to Dojo and YUI and React. So I've spent a career working with design systems, and I've made lots of mistakes, but hopefully I've learned a lot of lessons over time. This was, it did have a digital font, it's gone, but this is an example of a design system I built when I was 12. So when I was 12, we didn't have design systems, or we didn't have Photoshop, we didn't have IDEs, so I had to do all the programming on this VIC-20, which you can see there with, I think, 5K of RAM. And I tried to code Attic Attack in BASIC. And to do that, I ended up making a character move across the screen, which I thought was fantastic for a 12-year-old. And I had to code all this by poking graphics on the screen and writing everything on graph paper. So that was an early stage interface inventory and very early stage living style guide. So I kind of honed some of the skills, hopefully, for building design systems. So what I'm going to quickly recap is, or I'll ask a question. Can anyone tell me what a design system is? Anyone want to venture? What's a design system? Anyone? It seems like an obvious question. In the industry, there's two definitions. Some people define a design system as a component library. Others define it as the actual digital production process. So my definition is the production line. I see it as the Toyota production line for digital. And I see the component library more as a GEL, a global experience language that you use to help deliver that digital experience. So in order to achieve a baseline when you're establishing a design system, you really need to look at the maturity of your business and figure out what's the capability maturity. So you look at what processes have already been defined. Are you inconsistent and reactive? Are you proactive? Are you measuring performance and processes and techniques? Or have you reached a stage where you actually optimize, that you have a continuous improvement culture? That means that if someone drops a litter on the floor, you go and pick it up, which means in development language that if you see a bug in code, each member of the team will go in and fix that bug, as opposed to leaving it for a test team to pick up. So this continuous improvement culture is like the top level. Part of this establishing that measuring criteria allows you to figure out where you sit, and then you can start establishing goals for where you need to try and move your organization higher up that pyramid. So the other thing that you can do is you can measure, in order to measure this digital production process, which is your Toyota production line, you can measure people. Measure people to measure the process. So one of the techniques that I'm using with my team is we're looking at individual developer, UX team, test team, BAs, looking at their happiness within the process, whether they're frustrated, or whether they're celebrating success. We're looking at their individual productivity. We can look at like Git logs and things like that. We're looking at individual knowledge. We're looking at where failures are occurring, and we're measuring those. And we're also looking at the number of errors that are being made. Again, none of these metrics should be used to punish people. They're only there to help enable people and make everyone awesome. So we use these metrics to help, and you don't blame the player, blame the game. So you look at the system and look at problems within the system, don't look at individuals. So the next step in looking at your design system is look at how you integrate between departments. If you've got separated and siloed processes, if you have cross-functional teams, look at how information passes between teams and individuals, and have this holistic elevator view of how your systems interact. This is what a design system for me really represents, is how you connect and allow collaboration across teams. So, which is a key part of the culture of design systems. The next thing that I've created, and I'd like to systemize and automate this, is we have individual personas. So when I mentioned UX dog fooding, take all the tools that UXers use, but try to apply that to your own system. What we're doing here is we have a persona for a full stack developer, but we also have personas for UXers or CMS content authors. In this wheel that we've got here, which is borrowed from the Marissa Mayer famous resume, this is a nice way of illustrating what sprint activities this particular developer is spending their time in. And this is based on survey information that we did with our team. So what we discovered here is that we're spending a lot of time on build and deploy tasks. That quadrant actually goes out to about 30% for some of our team members, which is way too much. So you can imagine if you have this as a dashboard where you can automate this information, you can start seeing how individual productivity is impacted within your design system. The next thing that we've been using is diary studies, ethnographic research. So individuals within the teams that I've been working with, some of them keep a diary. Not all developers or UXers like to do this, but some designers I know have this as a religion, where they have a Moleskine diary. In here you can keep track of your successes, failures, ideas, what your routine is. I've got developers that I'm working with that are tracking individual tasks that they need to monitor, or frustrations, or problems with builds, or things that they want to go in and fix. It turns out these developer diaries and UX diaries, etc., are really useful tools to help understand how successful your design system is. If you have a routine where you're constantly reviewing these diaries and you encourage people to use them, you can start to understand whether your system's breaking or whether it's helping and enabling people. This is an example of one of mine. So I keep mine in Markdown, and I think it's Jess Telford uses a CLI tool to maintain a journal. So for here, I keep mine in Markdown, so I've got to-dos, experiments, and challenges. The next thing that I make use of are canvases. So this is something you can use right at the beginning of your process. And I've used a lean canvas because that's used for products, and design systems are products. With a lean canvas, you can really quickly map out quadrants for what problem you're trying to solve, what solutions you're about to provide, the unique value proposition for your design system, what your unfair advantage is, and what your custom segments that you're targeting. And then the key quadrant is your key metrics. So any design system that's going to remain successful, you need to monitor and measure it. That means you have analytics and processes in place where you can understand where the friction lies within your design system. So if you can see, for example, here, I've suggested that we have a 20% adoption rate after 8 months. It's always good to have some measurable metrics within your key metrics. Don't set nebulous or vague goals that are hard to achieve. The next one that I discovered only recently, which I think is even more valuable, is the value proposition canvas. This is again used for product design. Value proposition canvases are key. They're very, very powerful documents that allow you to validate product market fit. So with this particular value proposition canvas, I've populated it with everything a design system needs to worry about. So in this design system, you map on the left everything that you offer as a solution. So what your game creators are and what your pain relievers are. And then what services you offer within your design system. And remember, for me, the design system is your Toyota production line for digital. And on the right-hand side, you map that to your customer. So as long as you can draw lines from the left to the right, you can show that you have a product market fit. So if you've mapped out the right set of problems for the right problem space, you should get a nice fit of game creators matched to pain relievers for your target audience, which is the developers and individuals using that design system. So this becomes a really good mapping exercise to figure out, are we delivering the right value for the target audience? This is a canvas that I made up. So this is actually based on the Google Heart framework, which is looking at happiness, engagement, adoption, retention, and task success. This is actually used for measuring and optimizing standard web conversions and metrics for users using a website or an application. But you can apply that to a design system as well. The same metrics apply. So here you can see I can measure engagement by total number of active users, the number of churn, number of pull requests. I can look at fragmentation, and I can then also look at individual things like task success, like are developers spending a lot of time with build systems or writing unit tests instead of writing features. You can start asking the right questions about optimizing that workflow and reducing friction. So a canvas, again, is a really useful tool to map out your ideas and to start solidifying an approach. Measure to improve. So here you can also track the total cost of ownership. So here, what you do here is you look at how much you're spending on, it might be Amazon costs or testing costs, or it could be security audits, and you routinely keep a track of the spend that you need to keep your design system alive. These costs can end up being hidden, and they can create unseen pressures in decision making and other things within the system that you've got. Another tool that I use is visualizing technical debt. So technical debt is sometimes this nebulous and transient in some ways thing that can be difficult to conceptualize, especially if you have people that aren't particularly technical and they're not aware of the concept of technical debt. If you're trying to convince someone to pay back technical debt, or someone decides to move a deadline, graphs like this are very useful, because you can say, our projected deadline was here in the green, but you've decided to move our deadline forward. That volume now represents the total amount of technical debt and lower quality software that we're now delivering. This now becomes quite a compelling illustration of what technical debt is. Another thing to illustrate is risks, and you can use a risk radar to do that. I was introduced to this process from ThoughtWorks, where instead of sharing lots of spreadsheets for risk registers with individuals, where people forgot where the highest items were appearing in the spreadsheets, because we used to have like hundreds of them, you can show every month on a risk radar where your main risks are. And these could be delivery risks or any risks you have in delivering your design system. This allows you to communicate visually, because humans have a higher bandwidth for visual processing, where the main problems and risks are. And one of the mantras in design systems should be make the invisible visible. So you can see here the huge difference between front end and back end. Innovation. So I'm going to jump. Anyone recognize this board? Battleships. So innovation is actually a game of battleships. And the reason why is what you're actually doing when you're following lean startup and you're doing experiments and controlled experiments. You're mapping the surface of a territory and trying to work out what works and what does not work. So you can see here you've got some wins. The interesting thing about seeing it as battleships is every failure is a success. It now means you've explored the territory of what works and what does not work. The reason why this is important is you have to remember that The map is not the territory. That means all we ever do is make a model of what reality is. It's not what reality actually is. As long as you accept it's just a model and an approximation, you can then make better decisions. And the other thing is, if the map does not follow the terrain, if the map doesn't match the terrain, follow the terrain. So if your map isn't correct, ignore your map and start building a new map. So this leads on to the next one. We've now learned with machine learning, which is back to my previous battleships example, that if you allow a machine learning algorithm to make controlled mistakes and not just make optimal choices, the machine learning algorithm's performance increases. So this shows why making mistakes allows you to map the surface of what works and what does not work. So permission to fail is actually a good thing. Failure is very good. It means you now understand what didn't work. The more failures you have, the greater surface you now of understanding you have of what will now work in that market, what will not. And it also now means you, when it comes to design systems and experimenting with components and seeing which components are actually going to work in the market, even your failures are going to inform what the next iteration of those components are going to be. Prototype and test. I think you recognise what this is from. This is a McDonald's movie. So where they prototyped in a tennis court, I think. This means you can prototype and test at very low cost. You don't have to build a kitchen. You don't have to employ skilled staff. You can have approximate proxies or placeholders. We're doing guerrilla testing where I work at the moment, where we're just tapping each other on the shoulder to test components or test interfaces. And we're going to do coffee shop testing if we get legal to approve it. So there's lots of things you can do at very, very low cost to get a different answer or a different fidelity of answer. So if you remember that the higher quality you go, the more expensive it gets, the more accurate the answer. So customer testing gives you an accurate answer, but you can still do guerrilla testing. And you'll get maybe a lower confidence in answer, but at least it's better than a guess. So takeaways. Assess your capability and maturity. Use canvases to model. And they're very cheap and easy to make. Just have sessions where you post-it note and collaborate. Measure your people to improve your process. So any optimized process is actually always about the people within that process. Don't fall into the dogma of getting addicted to a process. Always remember that people are behind every single thing that we build things for. And failure is exploring the surface of what works and what doesn't. And be awesome and make other people awesome. That's what design systems are designed for. We're trying to make other teams and other individuals awesome by giving them stuff with pre-baked decisions, all the technical debt removed, all the UX and technical problems removed, and allowing them to build things quickly and at scale. Make people awesome. So you can see here, people don't buy products, they buy better versions of themselves. This is a famous illustration. And how to be a 10x engineer, help 10 others to be twice as good. And the last takeaway, watch people like Mark Zuckerberg. Thank you.